I just finished watching season 3 of Better Call Saul, and guys, this show is just getting better and better. We are going to go through all of it. We're going to talk about it in depth, spoilers. I feel like I don't need to say that with the title, but you know what? Sometimes you just need to clear it up. I love this season. I'm going to talk about it. Heavy spoilers. We're going to go from start to finish in just a second. Before we do, though, I do want to say hello, everybody, and welcome back to another video. If you are new here, my name is Kyle. I am your guy with too many YouTube channels. Let's talk about Better Call Saul. So, guys, the thing about this season in particular was there was so much that happened, and there was so much that was really interesting, right? But I don't have, you know what? This might turn into another half-hour videos because my other Better Call Saul videos, season 1 and 2, I spoke for like 25 minutes to a half hour on each. I don't know if I'm going to be able to go that far into it this time around because I don't think there was like that many different plot points going on compared to the other season. But don't get me wrong, very enjoyable. I am so invested in this show. That cliffhanger at the end, okay, you know what? Let's start from it. I got some bullet points on my screen about what happened. I'm just going to briefly talk about the entire season, or like in depth, however much I really want to talk about it. So the one thing that I'm very confused is because the season started off with a flashback again, and it's Saul. It was so weird because Saul was leaving the mall and then somebody shoplifted and then he ratted him out, but then the cops found him and then he looked at the guy who was getting arrested by the police and was like, "You need a lawyer. Don't talk to him without a lawyer." Like, I'm so confused on where that whole thing's going because in season 2, I thought it was just kind of leading him to be depressed, and I thought because like the way Breaking Bad ended, right, I thought this dude was going to end blowing his brains out. Now I don't know what to think. I don't know where that's going, so to be honest with you, I'm very interested, though. It's like such a little scene of like Saul working, right? It's just, I have no idea what to make of it. But anyways, after that, we get to the present of the show, which I guess is the past, right? So it starts off with Jimmy helping Chuck actually remove all the tinfoil from the walls because Chuck ended up faking like his disease was really bad, but then they ended up bonding a little bit, which is really nice to see. But at the same time, like, I really hate Chuck, so I'm like, wow, this is really nice, but at the same time, Chuck's an a-hole. Why are you trying to bond with this guy? And then Chuck just straight up looked at him while they were having a good time and was like, "Jimmy, you're gonna pay for what you did." And I'm like, oh, wow. I mean, to be honest with you, I understand it, but Chuck's such a jerk, man. Like, I don't even know what to say. But so Jimmy takes off. The whole moment is really hurt. But then Chuck ends up being with Ernesto, and Ernesto ends up accidentally hearing the recording because I think Chuck asked him to replace batteries or something. And then he's like freaking out. And he's like, "You did not hear that. You did not hear that." But little did we know, W. Ernesto, he goes on and just decides to tell Kim. But we're going to get into that in a second because we have a little bit of a shift here. And there's a whole episode of Mike tracking someone with a gas cap. And he was trying to figure out, like, to be honest, I don't remember why he was hunting somebody. But regardless, he ended up meeting up with Gus. And this is where I was talking about earlier in the video when I first started this, where it's like, I don't have that much to really go in depth to because it was like a whole episode of Mike, like, figuring it out, tracking different guys, driving around cars. You know what I mean? It was all so entertaining, but there's only much I can say about it. You know what I mean? That's where I'm kind of at with it. But then we're on to the real juicy part, right? So Ernesto goes on and he tells Kim about the tape, and then Kim ends up telling Jimmy, and Jimmy freaks out and breaks into Chuck's house. And I was like, oh my God, this is what's going to happen. I don't know. Chuck's going to call the police on him. Chuck's recording him again. I don't know what's going on. So Jimmy freaks out because he is stupid and still like trusts his brother. His brother used his own, like, I guess, mental health condition against him, right? And Jimmy started freaking out, destroying the tape, destroying the place. Well, he didn't do that much damage, but he mainly wanted to destroy the tape. And he's like, "Oh my God, Chuck, what do you have another one? You have another one?" He was like freaking out on him. And then Howard and some other dude was watching him as a witness. And then Jimmy was completely caught. And I'm sitting here and I was like, oh man, I didn't know what to expect was going to happen with Jimmy. The only thing that I know is, of course, Jimmy does end up being okay and end up being a lawyer, or at least like by the time this show ends and we end up Breaking Bad, because God knows what's gonna happen, right? At the end of like the technical present or like post Breaking Bad, we see with the flashbacks, you know what I mean? Which is really weird, right? But we take a little bit of a pause on that. And so Mike and Gus are finally together, which is really cool to see. And it's really cool to see Gus, like, I guess, starting off with like the beef with the Salamancas and all that. So Gus hates Hector, but they both agree not to kill Hector. They want to get Hector caught by the police, and Mike ends up getting Hector's drivers arrested instead by using that shoe method, by throwing him up on the wire and then shooting some coke on the back. So I really enjoy like these scenes with Mike because I have a feeling this wouldn't be interesting in any other show. Because we spend so much time watching Mike just like have a gun, you know what I mean? Walking around, you know. And what am I setting up now? Mike's in his trunk. And it's like, it's such boring stuff. But because it's Mike and we know he's up to something weird, it's just entertaining. You know what I mean? It's like, think about how much time we spent with Mike just in that car following somebody. And I'm like, I don't know about you guys, but I was sitting here like, where's he going? Like, you know, like, it's such a boring thing to do, but because it's Mike and it ends up like having a payoff, that's what's great about Vince Gilligan, is because I know there's going to be payoff to this stuff. I know this is stuff that I need to pay attention to. You're going to tell me a fantastic story. So it's really cool to see that. But anyways, the drivers end up getting arrested. Hector's really, he gets pissed off, but he gets pissed off a little later, which is what we're going to talk to. But we cut back to Jimmy, and Jimmy obviously gets arrested and has that whole situation. And after some arguing with Kim ends up being the one to represent him in the case. So now after that scene, we finally go back to Hector. And I believe this was a flashback. I'm a little bit unclear on that because it seemed to not go exactly right with the situation. Maybe I'm just dumb though. So we have that whole situation with Hector and Gus's guy there. Hector brings the big baddie or the big boy some money and he's like, yeah, look at that, rolled up. But then Gus's dude comes in and it's just like infinitely more money. And you could just see Hector brewing, Hector flipping out. And the dude even tells Hector, it's like, okay, I want all the money like this next time, right? And then, man, Hector's such a D-bag, but it's interesting how they're building that story with like the rivalry between him and Gus. After that, we have that weird, I guess it was a flashback because now we're like moving on to another flashback and it's like Chuck with his ex-wife, and I guess it's showing the thing like how they were already separated, but I guess he was like trying to get her back or something, and he did not want her to know about the condition, and they had a nice dinner. They had a decent dinner. He's like, oh, the lights just aren't working, right? It's totally not my condition. And then she ends up going on the phone, and Chuck, the a-hole that he is, doesn't want to tell the truth, and he's like, no, and I actually just knocked over my head. Sorry, Sonny, and my dog that woke up my dog. I just ran her. Sorry, Sonny. I swear to God, I didn't mean to do that. Oh my God. So Chuck, the a-hole that he is like, no, and just smacks the phone out of her hand, and there's the end of that, right? And then it's just like some awkward thing. To be honest with you, like, I think it was just because they're setting up to bringing her back, so they wanted something with them, but I don't really know. I think it would have been a lot cooler if they showed like them actually in a relationship, them having some romantic times, or like them actually breaking up. Maybe we'll get through that in the future because we like to get flashbacks in this show, right? But then the entire trial takes place. And I was of the opinion, I was like, okay, Jimmy's going to get out of this somehow, but I don't know. And if you thought about last video, what I was thinking was, and I didn't know how this was going to work. I don't know how this would work legally. I guess Jimmy could complain about, or not complain, argue that he just admitted to that to make Chuck feel better because Chuck is mentally ill, right? Because like that's the way you could probably get around it, but I don't know. I didn't know if this would even work in real life because he's admitting to it. But then could he just go back on his word and say, I only admitted to it because of this, and it's actually not true? I don't know how that would work legally because I guess that could mean like nobody ever admits to anything unless it's in real time. Again, my point is, I don't know how that would work, so that was my only speculation. I ended up being right for a little bit, so I was like really proud of myself. I was like sick. But then before the trial, this is what I didn't know what to make of. Before the trial, Chuck bumps into Huel. I actually had to rewind the show because I was like, wait, was that Huel? Because Huel lost so much weight. Huel's looking good, man. I was like, oh my God, look at Huel. And I was like, this is Huel. What did he do? What did he take from him? I thought he took some papers. I didn't know what to think at all. I was just like, he bumped into Huel. Something happened there. Except I had no clue what happened there. But of course, we know that he ended up putting the battery in Chuck's pocket, which was a genius. And oh man, he got him good because we had the whole trial there. It was going back and forth a little bit, but then Jimmy was like, oh, can you feel where the closest charge to you is right now? And he ended up proving it was a mental illness because Chuck had a fully charged battery in his pocket that whole time. I didn't see that coming. I didn't know where to go with that. So the mental health thing kind of worked a little bit and ended up working in Jimmy's favor for the most part. All that happened was Jimmy was, I guess, banned from being a lawyer for a year, I believe it was. That was all a whole great scene though. It was so tense, dude. Oh my God. That episode, I sometimes have shifts at 4 a.m. And it was one of those days where I was working at 4:30 in the morning and I was up past midnight constantly going, I need to know what happens in this trial. I need to know what happens. And then I ended up getting like a half hour of sleep that night. It was so good, man. That whole part with the trial was so good. It was so tense. And the actor for Chuck, oh my God, is that guy good? he is fantastic at what he does. And he had that little flip out where he's like, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazier. And Jimmy's just getting it out for me. You know what I mean? Like, he's so good at what he does, man. But that was a really, really clever thing to happen with Jimmy. I didn't know what was going to happen. I ended up being right about Huel. I kind of ended up being right about arguing where it's just like, hey, I just said that to make him feel better. So W Clen in that sense. But man, so written, right? But then we go back to Nacho and the cartel, because after a drug deal with Nacho, Gus ends up getting in a car with Lydia. Oh, Lydia, have you seen Lydia? Lydia, wow. Good to see Lydia. We love Lydia. Lydia. Lydia, it was so nice to see Lydia back, right? But I did not expect that, to be honest with you, because I guess I didn't expect it, because she kind of slipped my mind, Lydia, but that would make sense for her to be in this show, right? Because all that stuff, like what happened with Gus, and Mike was working with her too, so I don't know why I didn't think she would show up, but I was like, oh my god, it's Lydia. That's kind of where I was at with that. But going back to Nacho, so after that drug deal, Nacho ended up having had enough of Hector. So he had like a little bit of an altercation with his father, and I guess that's what drove him to do it. It's a little bit unclear if Nacho wants like to get away from the Salamancas in general, or if he just has a vendetta against Hector. I'm not entirely sure, or if it's just because like Hector's picking on his father. I don't really know, so if anybody could clear that up in the comments, I would really appreciate that. So he ends up talking to Mike, and Mike tells him like the way to do it, and he just takes one of the pills that Hector's dropped, because we know he's had some heart problems, and he replaces the pills. He goes to that crazy guy and gets some nice little pills, switches them, right? And then that was a tense scene too. I knew he was going to do it, because I was thinking like, oh, okay, so this is how Hector gets the way that he is. I was curious on how that was going to happen, and so we ended up having that scene with Nacho being really tense, and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry, Don Hector. I don't know what Don means. Like, maybe this is just me being dumb, but like they call him Don Hector, I think. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he's like boss or something. Maybe I should just look it up. So he either dropped something or he started tying his shoe, and regardless, it ended up being successful, right? Hector now has some dangerous pills in his body. After that, though, we have that whole scene with Jimmy trying to sell his TV commercials. He needs to make money because he can't be a lawyer right now. So that one was it was interesting to watch, but there's not too much to say about it. Same thing with Mike. He ends up building some playgrounds, and he has a potential love interest, which would be very interesting, to be honest with you. I don't know where that's going to go, but I feel like they just didn't introduce like Mike getting along with some woman for no reason. Maybe that was the whole point of it, right? But so Jimmy also has some plan to get at Chuck by going to the insurance company asking for some money, but then he ended up just like breaking down, fake crying, and he's like, oh, it's just Chuck. It's just Chuck. He had a breakdown at the trial, right? And he just wanted to raise Chuck's insurance. But man, little did Jimmy know that this is going to lead to something really, really bad, right? So yeah, that's unfortunate. So while that's happening, we know that's going to happen in the background, but that Jimmy also ends up doing all that community service stuff, ends up making a little bit more money from there, has his lawyer practice. Like he argues to get like $700 out of somebody or something like that. So other than that, Nacho, like I said, he ended up actually switching the pills successfully. Mike started working with Gus's security. Again, not too much to say about that stuff there. But there's this whole episode on Jimmy trying to get Sandpiper to settle. And poor Marlene, I believe that was her name. Poor Marlene, man. Jimmy did, like, as much as Jimmy's the main character and we like him and stuff, that guy can really hurt some people. I'm like, oh my god, that poor old lady, you're making everybody turn against her. And she was just like so sweet, right? She was such a sweet character, and Jimmy just ruined her. But Jimmy ended up doing the right thing. And Jimmy ended up like taking the fall where he's like, oh, I don't like these old people. I just had to fool this little one. I was like, Jimmy, I mean, that's good that you can do that. It's good that you made them all get along, but you made this girl borderline want to blow her brains out, right? So that was a very sad situation. It kind of made me look at Jimmy. I'm like, all that for, I get it's like $1 million or whatever it was, but I wouldn't be able to do that in good conscience myself, truthfully. Regardless, after that, we have that whole scene where Chuck and Howard get into a little argument because Chuck is like, no, this insurance thing is ridiculous. And then Howard ends up, after the final disagreement, convinces everybody to make Chuck retire. And I'm like, oh, that looks so good on him. This dude's having the walk of shame. Everybody's saying goodbye to Chuck. I know I'm fast forwarding a little bit with this. Like, it was a big, long, horrible scene, and horrible in such a good way, because I'm on anti-team Chuck, man. That guy has been a jerk since childhood, and they showed it since his mom died with Jimmy, just because he's like, Jimmy. She was like, Jimmy. You know what I mean? And then he was really pissed off about that. And he was talking about Jimmy having like an easy life or something along those lines. Like, Chuck is such an a-hole, so it looked good on him, man. Looked good on him. Spoiler alert, I hope he dies in that fire. So Chuck, he just sucks, man. It was probably a really emotionally wrecking scene for some people, but I was like, oh yeah, there you go. Get that anger. There you go. You're all pissed off. Who are you now? You're not going to be a lawyer. You're just going to be alone because nobody likes you. You know what I mean? So that was a very satisfying scene for me, to be honest with you. But after that, a not so satisfying scene was after that. Kim is overworked and she just drives into a rock. There's very few times where shows legitimately scare me. I had a bowl of cereal and I almost spilt it because it was weird because they didn't exactly show the crash. It was just like she was driving and then it was like half a second, then bang, the airbag's off. You know what I mean? So I was like, whew. But thankfully Kim's alive. I actually kind of thought Kim was going to die there after that car crash because she's not in Breaking Bad. So I was kind of expecting a lot of these characters to die. I actually just thought of this now. What if Chuck dies? We're going to talk about that in a second. That actually, to be honest, didn't cross my mind. But anyways, after that, they end up needing money, right? Kim can't work as much. Saul is looking for some money, so they get rid of the office. They fire Francesca, which sucks because at this point in the show, she's very nice. So I wonder when the switch comes, right? Because she's a little bit of a dink to Saul. Maybe it's because Saul gets into more shady stuff and involves her with it. Maybe that's a thing. But after that, where I believe this is the last episode, Hector ends up meeting with Gus and the higher-ups with some other people, and flips out because they like what Gus is doing. They want the transportation to go through Gus's way. He starts flipping out and is like this, and then he ends up having a heart attack or whatever the heart problem was, and he ends up taking the pills, faints, not good, right? Hector's on the ground, and then I'm thinking like, okay, so that's how it works. The pills don't end up killing him, and then he ends up being the Bell Hector. So that's what I would imagine is going to happen after that. And after that, pretty much it goes over to Chuck, I believe, in the last episode. And this is where I was talking about with the fire. For some reason, until I started talking about this particular part, I didn't think Chuck was going to die. But now that I'm thinking about it, I was expecting a lot of characters to die because they're not in Breaking Bad. So Chuck might have killed himself. I don't know. So Chuck was like sitting there and he's all pissed off. He's like, I'm better than everybody. He was like kicking over a lantern or something, right? Or he was kicking over the desk and then the lantern ended up falling. And then the episode ended with the fire coming. But Chuck can get out of that. Unless he was really sad and he wanted to burn himself. But that's like the worst way you could kill yourself though. So yeah, no, I don't think he's going to kill himself. I don't know what's going to happen with Chuck. I'm thinking on the spot here. Yeah, I feel like Chuck's going to survive this, right? It might come out that he was kicked out, but I don't know how Jimmy's probably going to care about him. Maybe Jimmy will show up, but then again, Jimmy probably wasn't there. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with that. There's so many different possibilities, but I'm stuck because Chuck was kicking the lantern or kicking the desk. It looked like he thought about knocking it over and starting a fire, but who would kill themselves like that, right? Yeah, he was probably just thinking, pissed off, and accidentally started a fire. Oh, and before that, I forgot to mention he started going crazy and destroying his house. All of his symptoms are back. I forgot to mention that part. I completely forgot. So, Chuck's crazy. Maybe he was so crazy he ended up burning himself. I don't know. I guess I'll find out. So, guys, let me know what you were thinking. Did you think Chuck was killing himself, or is killing himself like not even part of this conversation? Maybe I'm just going off the rails here. But, guys, that was Better Call Saul Season 3. I'm very, very excited for Season 4. The show is so good. I don't think it's as good as Breaking Bad, but man, it's right there. It is right there. What a phenomenal show. I cannot wait to watch Season 4. I cannot wait to talk about it. Guys, if you don't mind, if you made it this far in the video, please keep the comment section Season 4 only, or Season 3. Season 3. Only Season 3, because I'm very excited to watch this show. I read the comments. I don't want anything spoiled. So please let me know what you think down below. And thank you so much for watching this video on the screen right now. If you'd like to continue watching the Clenema channel, there'll be 2 videos on screen for you to check out right here. I will see you either there or in the next video, guys. Take care.